All right, time now for the Saturday Breakout. The next round, guys. Jim Dunaway along with Ryan Brown, old school Dunaway and Brown here to wrap up week one. If you're with us live, you can chat with us here in the chat room as Chase is doing already kick Vandy out of the expanded SEC. Alex says, is the seat getting hot for Coach O? Hey, don't get ahead in the script there, Alex. We'll roll to all that a little bit. Let's see if I can remember how to do this. We'll show you. There you go. There's Chase A right there. Kick Vandy out. And is the seat getting hot for Coach O?
Yes.
And there's Mr. Stewart. UCLA ranked next week? Yes. Yes, they will be ranked next week. So thanks for being with us as we do this Saturday Breakout. Some of you are listening to this maybe on a Sunday or Monday, and we are the next round. Guys, remember we're live 9 to 1 weekdays, Monday through Friday on all of our social media platforms, including right here on mine and Brownie's Twitter feed and YouTube, where you can watch us when we're in our nice new studios, as opposed to right now when I am in my temporary home and Brown's in his permanent, beautiful downstairs basement where we watched Alabama open up the season. It wasn't a perfect performance. We'll hear from Nick Saban in a second, but it was 44-13. And boy, whatever you thought you were going to get from the young quarterback, Bryce Young, I think you got maybe a little bit more of that, Brownie, as you roll into the Alabama-Miami conversation. I think Bryce Young was impressive from the get-go as much with his mind as he was his arm.
Yeah, I mean, I was impressed with what I saw. I didn't know what to expect out of Bryce Young. What I honestly expected was a little bit of a step back from where Alabama had been, and that was no reflection on Bryce Young. It's just that when you look at how dynamic Alabama has been at quarterback under Tua Tagovailoa and Mac Jones, Tua's, the best quarterback to me that's ever played at Alabama. And then Mac Jones had the best single season we've ever seen at Alabama. So maybe he's the best quarterback ever to play. I don't know, but I think you make an argument that's the two best quarterbacks in Alabama history, certainly statistically. I thought really the only way you could go would be a step back. And far from that, I thought Bryce Young, in a lot of ways, was just as good as those guys. 27 of 38, 344, 4 touchdowns. He had that one fumble where, he just kind of got hit. I was very impressed with Bryce Young. You pointed something out, Dunaway, that I had noticed before you pointed it out on Twitter, and you were spot on. The guy never leaves. His eyes never leave downfield.
Ever.
I mean, anytime he gets pressure, he feels the pressure. He's able to move, but he keeps his eyes downfield. And I like the way, too, that he was able to escape the pocket, get out of the pocket to get those clean sight lines. But then he gets set again, and he's still got his feet under him, and he's not just scrambling around and throwing it all over the place like Max Johnson was for LSU. I mean, Bryce Young was impressive. I liked what I saw.
Bryce was impressive. Nick Saban afterwards sounded like this over in Atlanta as Alabama wins another opening game under the greatest head coach of all time.
I was really proud of our players today in terms of the way they competed in the game today. I thought we came out and did a really good job on offense, scored the first, 3 or 4 possessions. Got some stops on defense. I think as the game went on, I think we got a little bit sloppy, which is something that we can learn from. The one thing the game always does is shows you very clearly where you are, who you are, what you need to work on, what you can improve on, what you did well. And we obviously did a lot of really good things well. I thought Bryce played really well for his first start. Mechie was really good. Williams was really good. I got to play a lot of players.
They did get to play a lot of players as well because as one Miami fan, the guy who did the rap song, Brown, remember the diss song? He tweeted. Yes. He was on social media at halftime, and I think he was at the game, like in the last row. It looked like he says, "Are we about to get beat 100-3?" And honest to goodness, at halftime, I thought there was a chance you were going to get beat 100-3. Yeah. It was a beatdown.
Yeah, it was an absolute beatdown. I mean, Miami was just mismatched or outmanned, however you want to say it. They could not block Alabama's pass rush. They kept trying to block Will Anderson, with a single blocker. I don't know that there's anybody in the country that can do that. I don't know who the best offensive line in the nation is, but I'm interested to see how they try to block Will Anderson if Alabama plays him, because you're not going to do it with a single blocker. you've got that defensive front. I hated that they lost Chris Allen so quickly. And, the initial reports are that's going to be a lengthy recovery for him with that foot injury. And that's just so sad, man. But really, without him, that defense barely missed a beat. I mean, they were still dominant.
Yep, I agree with that, and we'll look at the 4 sacks, the 3-1 turnover ratio. But another thing I think you have to look at is that right off the get go, you get the word that they don't have their offensive line exactly the way they want. With the injury out at right tackle, there's a guy who could be your starting center, Chris Owens, having to start at right tackle, and Dalcourt's in there at center. That had been a battle going on throughout camp. So not a whole Alabama line. Maybe that's the way it ends up looking. I don't know, but J.C. Latham's in there at some point. I thought mixing and matching on their offensive line wasn't perfect, but I thought they gave Bryce enough time to get done whatever he had to do. And again, back to what Bryce Young does right. And Todd Blackledge talked about this in the broadcast, and Nick Saban talks about it. You'll hear it later on in the in postgame more later from Nick Saban, on how Bryce directs the blocking schemes about as good as you're ever going to see in a guy making his first career start.
No, and see, that's the stuff, you and I watch a game, we don't necessarily see that, right? Those are the things that are hard to pick up. You have to depend on the coach to tell you that. I will say as it relates to the offensive line, Alabama wants to run the ball better than they ran it. The leading carrier was Robinson with 12 carries, 60 yards. You only averaged 3.9 per carry. 38 rushes, 147, and just the single rushing touchdown from Trey Sanders, who, by the way, it was good to see Trey Sanders out there. I mean, it seems like you've heard that name forever and have nenever seen him play, really. But Alabama's got to run the ball better than that. I think if you want to try to find something that you leave this game saying, I'm not 100% pleased with, I think it would really the only thing you could probably point a finger at would be the rush offense. You got to be better than that. And, there's room for improvement, obviously. If you keep throwing the ball the way Bryce Young did, you're going to be able to run the ball better. 354 pass yards, that's going to open up the run. Teams aren't just going to be able to sell out and stop Brian Robinson and Trey Sanders and Roydell Williams and whoever's back there carrying the football, Jace McClellan. You're going to have to respect those receivers. And they've obviously got a burner in Jamison Williams. When he caught that crosser and got to the sidelines, he outran a terrific angle and went for the 94-yard touchdown. So they got some speed at receiver. JoJo Earl, I've been talking about this guy since signing day because I just stumbled across some video of this guy in one game Dunaway. He played in Texas and in one of the state championship games. And he was phenomenal in that game. And you can see it, JoJo Earl, that kid's going to be a stud.
Yeah, a lot of young talent there. We'll talk more about Alabama's win throughout this Saturday breakout. We'll get into Georgia and Clemson in just a second, but some more from you guys. Could this be the worst week, asked AG, for the ACC? Well, they did lose their 2 top 10 teams, 2 losses this week, and both of their offenses and both of their Heisman Trophy candidate quarterbacks did not look good in either one of those games. And Sam Howell for the North Carolina loss and DJ Uiagalelei tonight. I mean, DJ in that game, as we get into that, had 0 time all night long. Give credit to Kirby Smart and for Lanning on what they dialed up. That pressure was about as fast and relentless as I've seen in a long, long time.
Well, 7 sacks, and he had no idea what to do. He had no idea where to go with the football. He was not allowing plays to develop because he was constantly being swarmed. Even if he wasn't sacked, Georgia defenders were in his face. The pocket was collapsing around him. He just didn't have time to do anything. And they couldn't slow the pass rush down, Jim, because they couldn't run the football. Clemson had 23 carries for 2 yards. When do you think is the last time Clemson only rushed for 2 yards? I would guess it predates Dabo. I doubt Dabo's ever had a game as a coach where they rushed for 2 yards.
Yeah, it's tricky with the minus yardage you get in sacks, but my goodness, it was not an impressive night really for either one of those offenses. It was a defensive showcase. I thought it was fitting that the only touchdown in the game was scored by the Georgia defense.
Yeah, on a pick six. That's the thing is we were told JT Daniels is going to make Georgia into a different offense, that this wasn't going to be the same, old Kirby Smart plotting offense, playing to the defense. playing time of possession, field position, things like that. Well, JT Daniels, 22 of 30 for 135. I mean, Jimmy had 22 completions for 135 yards. I mean, just 4.5 yards per attempt there, per completion. That's just there. He wasn't able to move the ball down the field. They don't have a receiver. Paris Jackson, I know, was injured. They're without Pickens, obviously. He doesn't have a receiver that can stretch the field for him. So I think Georgia's still got some offensive issues. And they only rushed for 121. That's a really good Clemson defense. But they struggled to move the ball as well. So I came away from that game blown away by how well Georgia played defensively. That is a legit national championship defense, it looks like. They've still got work to do on offense.
Yeah, that's what Stewart asked. Is Georgia good enough to win it all offensively? I'll ask you this question, and our coverage is being brought to you by the great folks at Mortgage Right. Wherever you watch or listen to the next round, you can get a mortgage with our friends at Mortgage Right. I'll ask you, Georgia, Clemson now moving forward. Do you feel like Clemson can survive? They'll be favored in the rest of them, survive and get back into the hunt to be in the playoffs? And does Georgia look like a playoff team to you?
Georgia does not look like a playoff team with that offense. I think they can get through the East with that offense because I haven't, and I know we'll get to the other teams. So watching the rest of the East, Florida's still got a quarterback battle going on right now, Jim. They don't. Emory Jones has not taken that quarterback job by the reins there. They're
less than impressive. Less than impressive against Florida Atlantic tonight.
Yeah, I'll say this: Kentucky doesn't have a quarterback battle. Kentucky finally has a quarterback that can complete passes.
Yeah, for a while today, I thought Penn State let the wrong guy go, and then Clifford played better down the stretch. But for a moment, I mean, different opponents, obviously, but Levis looked really good.
Yeah, I mean, Levis threw, I don't have it in front of me, it was 300-plus yards, though, which that's like, I think it was 345, which is like 3 full games for Kentucky last year and the years before. So, they've actually got an offense that can throw the football. I don't know that, I'm not saying they can compete with Georgia at all, but they can at least throw the football now. Missouri was fairly fortunate to beat Central Michigan. South Carolina. I mean, crap, they scored 45 points at the graduate assistant starting at quarterback, so They did something right. I wasn't blown away by Tennessee. So the point I'm getting at is even Georgia with limited offense is good enough to win the East. I don't see who in the East is going to push them. So then it comes down to a one game. And listen, if they finish the East undefeated, I think win or lose against Alabama or Texas A&M or whoever in the SEC championship game, they would have a good shot of being in the playoffs.
Yeah, interesting day in football. So we've given you a little Nick Saban, more from Coach Saban coming up, or as Bryce Young continues to call him, just simply Saban. But if it doesn't bother Nick, it doesn't bother me either. It's the quarterback that played really well in his first start. And as some of you are said in their chat there, if he forget just the first start, if they'd had that quarterback play a couple of other times in the history of Nick Saban there in Tuscaloosa, they may have 2 or 3 more national championships in Tuscaloosa. And that's how good Bryce, and you hadn't even seen Bryce Young really run the football a ton yet either. He stayed in the pocket, really good at eyes in the back of his head. We'll talk about Brian Harsin's first win at Auburn. You'll hear from the Auburn coach coming up in segment 2 and 3. And then we'll get into what all of you are talking about over there, what happened tonight out in Pasadena. LSU's gone through a lot with the hurricane. You won't use that as an excuse. But Ed Orgeron laid down the gauntlet walking into the historic Rose Bowl today. Caught on social media. If you didn't see it, it's on our Next Round Twitter feed. He's walking in. A UCLA fan is yelling at him as he's walking in. Orgeron calls it a sissy blue shirt or pansy blue shirt, something like that, right? And then those blue shirts took it to LSU tonight. We'll talk about that coming up as we roll on our Saturday TNR Breakout. The next round, guys, Dunaway and Brown being brought to you by our friends at Mortgage Right. All right, segment number 2 as we roll with you on our Saturday Breakout here. Dunaway and Brown with you, and all of you in the chat room. We'll keep working you guys in. A lot of you, Sissy Blue is what the Ed Orgeron comment was. Thank you so much for that. Greg, the big ball game, Greg Ball-Bama says Ed Orgeron will not be the coach at LSU in 2022. So let's start right there, Bramble, what you saw from LSU tonight and the loss in Pasadena or on Saturday depending on when you're listening to this. I don't think they have the right quarterback, but I guess they don't have a choice anymore. Max was a guy that was not very protective of the ball, and I always feel like he's backpedaling when he's throwing the football, backing up when he's throwing the football. Your thoughts on what you saw from LSU and UCLA, and is UCLA in the Pac-12 race when November rolls around?
I think they can be, because to answer that part of your question, we saw Washington, who appeared to be one of the better teams of the Pac-12, lose to Montana at home, obviously. So, Washington has got some question marks they've got to fill. Arizona State, Jaden Daniels got banged up. I didn't get to see USC, Jim, because it was on the Pac-12 network, but they beat San Jose State fairly handily. That's a good win for them. So, I think UCLA can be in this race. Chip Kelly looks like he's got a solid team. But as it pertains to LSU, what jumps out at me is, do you think of, first of all, Chip Kelly teams? Let's just don't even talk about UCLA. Chip Kelly teams historically, do you think of those as physical, grinded out teams? No, I don't either. Do you think of UCLA historically as a physical, grinded out team? No. The rushing battle, 210 to 48. That's what just happened to LSU, 210 to 48 on the ground. That's alarming, super alarming to me if I'm an LSU fan, that I go out and I'm supposed to have a better defense. I had a historically bad defense last year. In the first game I play with my new defense, I get outrushed by UCLA 210 to 48. And I'm not sure which one alarms me the most if I'm an LSU fan, that I gave up 210 to UCLA, or that I can only rush for 48 against UCLA, because they're playing well. But you look at some of these defenses in the SEC they're about to have to go against. If you can't run it on UCLA, who are you going to run it on? And you just made the point. Max Johnson isn't the type of guy that you can just hand the game over to and win it with 48 rush yards. He panics. He does not get his feet set. He was scrambling around the whole time, and it wasn't entirely his fault. He didn't get any protection. Their offensive line is not good. Their defensive line is not good. Their linebackers and secondary were confused all night. They seem to have really good receivers, but they struggle to get the ball to them. They don't run the ball well. I'm not really sure what LSU did well in this first game against UCLA.
Yeah, that is a great point. They're not well coached. I was surprised when I saw the stat, but I guess I shouldn't be, because we watch LSU play a lot. But the stat at halftime, Ed Orgeron's 2-11 when trailing at the half. 2-11, now 2-12 when trailing at the half.
That's pretty bad. He can't rally the troops in the locker room, obviously, can he? There's just, I thought LSU would go out and take care of business in this game. I thought we were going to have a new LSU team. I thought we were going to be able to flush a lot of what we saw last year. In a lot of ways, it's not as crazy as last year's game was against Mississippi State, but that kind of looked a lot like what we saw against Mississippi State, didn't it? Last year, it wasn't to the same volume. I think State last year had 611 pass yards on them, something like that. Dorian Thompson-Robinson didn't do that, but it's just a defense that's confused. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. That was an alarming loss for LSU. Of everything that happened in the SEC today, I come away more alarmed for LSU than any team in the conference.
Yeah, as Landshark points out, it ends up that LSU is the one that got motorboated tonight. Yeah, they did.
They did.
The general says UCLA's D has like 7 graduate or senior transfers, and the other 4 are seniors with experience. Yeah, but are we going to make excuses about an SEC team playing those powder blue jerseys at the Rose Bowl? I don't. I remember Deshaun Foster and Freddie Mitchell and that UCLA team pushing Alabama around in 1999, and that did not end well. That was 2001, right?
2000. That's what this game felt like, honestly. It was a little bit like that game where they just didn't have any answers for the UCLA run game. And they have not fixed anything. If I'm, evaluating LSU, I was expecting to see some fixes on both sides of the ball. They haven't fixed anything.
They have not fixed anything. And for LSU, as a couple of you have said in the chat here, if they had played Tulane today, Tulane would be the best team in the state. Tulane also spending time in Birmingham. It was Houston for LSU before they went to Pasadena. They were displaced as well. And you ended up having a Tulane team that had a gutsy effort against Oklahoma, a bounce here or there, and the Green Wave shocked the world and beat my national championship pick, which I've got to back off now because that Oklahoma defense has not changed. It was still the same Oklahoma defense that I was led to believe had changed. But it wasn't. And Spencer Rattler, boy, it was not a good day for Heisman candidates, was it not?
It was not at all.
Sam Howell last night, DJ looked very pedestrian. It was a horrible day, I thought, for Spencer early on. I mean, he had some moments, but it just wasn't a good. I mean, who's your leader right now? I mean,
Bryce Young.
Bryce Young's going to be the guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you did a way too early week 1 Heisman poll, I don't know where else you go other than Bryce Young. I mean, he, to me, I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting someone. I watched a ton today, and the last 2 days, he's the best I've seen. I mean, he's the best I've seen. Best player, at a big position. I'm not saying he's best player in America, but at a Heisman position. The best player I've seen over the last couple of days was Bryce Young.
Kunkel's 64. I apologize if I don't get that right. I've been hitting the Redmont vodka all day.
That's good to me.
Kunkel's 64. Texas over Oklahoma this year. Do you think? I thought Texas looked good today. You're about to hear from Bryan Harsin and Auburn's win. So Auburn fans, bear with us, and Nick Saban on Bryce Young still to come. But when you look at Texas and Louisiana, there were a lot of people, and I think you were one of them, Brown, that thought Louisiana can make that game interesting. But Bijan Robinson's the real deal, and I thought Sark called a wonderful game.
I did think that, Jim. I'll tell you who talked me off that was Luganville on our show. I was all on him, and he, I thought, made some really good points about why that wouldn't happen. And I do think Texas was impressive. Bijan Robinson, 20 carries, 103 yards, and a touchdown. Texas, Card obviously won the quarterback battle because he played more than Thompson. And I thought Card was pretty good. 14 and 21, 224, 2 touchdowns. I mean, solid win for Texas. That's a good team they played. They get Arkansas, who struggled to put Rice away. I don't know if Arkansas was looking ahead to Texas, if Rice was just better, whatever. I don't know. But I was pretty impressed with what Sark did week 1 here with Texas. And I think Card is obviously going to be the guy going forward. If Texas and Oklahoma played tomorrow, that's a good game because you're right, Jim. We talk all the time. I'm constantly told how Alex Grinch has fixed or is going to fix the the Oklahoma defense, and he hasn't. That's still the same Oklahoma defense. And, Rattler got outplayed, honestly. I mean, the Tulane quarterback, I respect the heck out of that kid. He played his tail off. He played a better game than Rattler.
Yeah, got hit in the head several times in that game.
He did.
One more before you hear from Bryan Harsin, and we talk a little Auburn. But Tate says, does Georgia move to number 2 in the rankings? They would if I was still voting in the AP poll. You and I both have done that before. Georgia would have the best win to date. I can't move them ahead of Alabama because Alabama was one, and Alabama did nothing to move back, playing what the AP voters told me was the top 15 team. But I definitely would have Georgia number 2 in the country, even though their offense didn't score a touchdown.
Yeah, I would have Alabama 1, Georgia 2, Ohio State 3.
Me too.
That would be my top 3. Boy, after that, I don't know, because I'd have to drop Oklahoma based on today. Texas A&M, I'm just going to be honest with you, I did not watch a lot of that game. I saw the score over Kent State.
I will be honest. I watched a great deal of the first half, and it was not good to start with. It was a good second half, as you would expect Texas A&M to beat Kent State, but it was not great in the first half.
Let me tell you, and this will maybe get us into Auburn here. I know we got Coach Harsin coming up, but having watched a lot of the SEC today outside of Alabama and Auburn, I didn't see a whole lot of fluid offense. LSU was not fluid on offense. Arkansas was not fluid on offense. Florida certainly was not. Georgia was not. Now, I didn't watch much of South Carolina. Vandy only scored 3 points. I didn't watch one play of that game. I'm assuming they weren't very fluid on offense. They scored 3 points against East Tennessee State. There was not a lot of fluid offense in this conference. A conference that has been so good in offense the last couple of years. Feels like it's a little bit different. Auburn was playing a vastly inferior opponent. Akron is not a good team, but you got to give Auburn credit. I've always say this, Jim. People say, "Oh, they're not a good team." Well, this is what you're supposed to beat bad teams.
That's
and Auburn
right.
did that today.
And Auburn did that. Here is Bryan Harsin talking about his quarterback, Bo Nix, who will be on the show if you're listening to this on a Monday morning now. He'll be on the show at 11 o'clock on Monday, every Monday, thanks to our friends at Craneworks and Rental Works. And he completed double-digit passes before he had his first incomplete pass against Akron. Bryan Harsin afterwards being asked about his quarterback, Bo Nix.
Hey, Bryan, wanted to ask about Bo Nix's performance. You kind of touched on his decision-making, but just how would you assess him in his first game this season?
I thought he did a good job. You saw the plays that he executed. Everybody saw that. What I got to see was his presence and leadership in the huddle, his poise on the 2-minute drive to get us into field goal range and to get points at the end of the half. And just some of the other things, too, that not everybody would know. But, we called some shot plays, and the look might have not been there, and he made the right decision to not have that play run. So he managed the game well. I thought he played well. He ran when he needed to, and he's obviously very effective when he does that.
Bryan Harsin there talking about Bo Nix. And, Auburn did what they were supposed to do against Akron. Tank Bigsby, who I think a lot of people think if he goes 119 on a partial night like he did today, at some point, if you're going to put a running back not named Bijan Robinson into the Heisman conversation, maybe Tank will get to that point. I didn't see anything from Auburn tonight that would concern me. They look like a well-coached, well-prepared team.
Now, look, again, and I think Auburn fans are smart enough to know this, that was a bad team they were playing, but they needed that type of game to try to find some rhythm. That's what I said in my pregame video. I just wanted to see Auburn find rhythm, and that's kind of what I saw. They had rhythm on offense. It's a new-looking offense, obviously, and I think Bo Nix looked very comfortable in it. I mean, when have you seen these numbers from Bo Nix? 20 of 22, 275, 3 touchdowns. You didn't see those numbers under Gus Malzahn. Clearly, he was in very much of a comfort zone. You mentioned Bigsby, 119 rush yards and 2 touchdowns, 9.2 per carry. You didn't ask a ton of him with 13 carries. You didn't need a ton from him. The one thing we had talked about Auburn, Jim, going into this season, who steps up at receiver? Well, it was Shedrick Jackson tonight, but then Javarius Johnson was a huge surprise to me, the way he played. 3 catches, 51 yards. He had the touchdown catch. Kobe Hudson, they threw 5 times to a tight end, 5 times to Samuel Schinker. He had 5 receptions. I wish I could find this. I may be able to find it quickly, but our buddy Justin Hokanson tweeted that going all the way back to the start of the Malzahn era, I think the top tight end performance in a season was Letson-Kirk, I think with 14 catches. And wow. John Samuel Schinker had 5 tonight. So it's pretty obvious that you're going to see much more out of the tight end in this offense than you have in years past.
I will tell you, I look for good coaching, and LSU, playing a much better opponent, looked shaky at times. Watching a lot of football today, some teams just did not look well coached. I thought the Georgia Clemson game was just a battle of 2 really good defenses and 2 really good coaching staffs. I don't think anybody got out coached there, but when you watched enough football today, you would see like what has happened to David Shaw at Stanford.
That's amazing, isn't it?
They're playing Kansas State, and they're outmanned that entire game today.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing how that program has fallen off that far. I mean, they got beat up pretty good by Kansas State. They are a non-factor in their conference. That used to be a borderline national championship contender. I mean, I remember games where they beat Oregon to cost them a shot at the national championship, but beat USC. And boy, they are a shell of that team now. And I watched a good bit of that game, and if I remember right, it was 21-0 before they scored.
Chase, actually, day games gets me into the Redmont vodka earlier, so you've got full Redmont vodka, Jim, going right now. Friday, you missed full Bud Light, Jim, with the motorboating, where it ends up being LSU getting that tonight. Knuckles with defense coming back to 2021 version for Alabama. I'll tell you, Alabama's defense, you'll hear from Nick Saban coming up again on his quarterback, but he loved what the defense put out there on tape. When we come back, more from Nick Saban, a little bit more on that Georgia Clemson game, and we'll get you set for what is still to come on Monday night. Some bad news for Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. All that coming up in the final segment of our Saturday Breakout, brought to you by our friends at Mortgage Right. Remember, wherever you enjoy college football, any state in the union, our friends at Mortgage Right from right here in Birmingham, Alabama, much like the Tide last year, they took over the whole nation. You can get Mortgage Right loans anywhere in the country. Get that mortgage before you go find your dream house with our friends at Mortgage Right. Just check them out online. Mortgage Right, great guys right there, locally owned. All right, we'll start this segment off, Brownie, letting you hear one more soundbite from Bryan Harsin after Auburn's big win. The defense and one particular player was asked about tonight when Bryan Harsin did his post game just a few minutes ago, really from when we're recording this, 60-10 over Akron. I'll let you hear the question, and then we'll comment about Derek Mason's side of the football.
Brian, we have heard a lot about TD Moultrie during fall camp. Then he had 7 tackles a day, 3 tackles for loss. Just, what did you see from his performance?
Well, I think the defense overall, I thought those guys were getting to the ball. They were flying around, and we tackled well. In the first game, I thought we tackled well. I thought we were relentless in our pursuit to get to the ball. And then TD he's a guy, just talking about consistency. Like, he does that in practice. He does that in the weight room. He's got that motor that I think we saw tonight, and why he was able to go out there and make plays. I mean, he's into it. Even when we took him out, he's got, he's out there cheering on his teammates. He's right there in the front into the game. So he loves football. It shows up every day, and he's obviously talented. And I think his motor, his effort is something that separates him. And
listen, it's a feel-good day for Auburn against an opponent they were supposed to beat like this. Beat them a little worse probably than they should, 60-10. Alabama State next, but then that road trip to Penn State. Penn State had one of the better wins of the weekend on the road at Wisconsin. Not a whole lot of offense there, but Penn State's defense looked fantastic. So I ask you, as we look way ahead, Auburn and Penn State, do you like the fact that if you're Auburn that you've got 2 easy W's before you go to Happy Valley, or do you wish you had a slightly better opponent before you get tested up there?
Initially, looking at the initial schedule, I think we would have all have said it kind of plays out well for Auburn, but they played this game. Now, look, we're not coaches, Jim. You and I don't watch the film and find 50 mistakes, but I watched that game, the Auburn-Akron game, and I saw a pretty clean performance by Auburn. Sure, I'm sure were some busted assignments in there, but I saw a pretty clean performance. Like, I don't think it would hurt them to play something kind of between Akron and Penn State this next week. You can't do that, though. They got Alabama State, and whatever they messed up on, that's a good chance to clean it up, get some more rhythm. The good news is Bo Nix looked as good as he's looked as an Auburn quarterback in this game. So you don't have the pressure now of him having to have another game under his belt, trying to get to that spot. He's at the spot now. Go out, if you're Bo Nix, go out and have another 10 for 10 and get out of the game early, and you would have a ton of confidence going into to Happy Valley. That's a good Penn State defense, though, Jim. If people didn't watch that game, their offense put them in some disastrous situations, and they time and time again bailed out their offense. And I do not know how Penn State won that game, but somehow they managed to win it. Probably mid-third quarter, I remember thinking Auburn is going to not only beat this Penn State team. I hadn't even seen Auburn play, but I think they may can win by a couple scores up there. But, boy, the more you watch that defense, and once their offense finally showed some life and Clifford was able to connect on a deep ball or two, that's an interesting matchup. That Penn State team's got some vulnerabilities, obviously, but one of them is not their defense. Their defense was dominant.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I've enjoyed the whole start of college football, but the defense we saw last night with Virginia Tech against North Carolina, and then in several places today, I thought it has been just an entertaining weekend. I'm glad to have a little defense back into this conversation. Brownie, I'm going to throw some games out, teams that won today, and I want your reaction, and then we'll circle back to the two bigger games, the Alabama-Miami game and the Georgia-Clemson outcome. We just talked Penn State, and another Big Ten showdown. Iowa demolished Indiana. You won't remember this because you never give me credit. But as we were doing the 40 and 40, how many times did I say, I just don't think Indiana is going to be what they were. I just don't think Indiana is going to be what they were.
Now, not only do I remember that, you said it the other day. We did a segment on the show where we picked our team in the top 10 that's overrated. Didn't you go Indiana in that segment?
No, I went North Carolina, but that was
we all did, didn't we? I jumped in with North Carolina too because I felt good about that Friday night. That was impressive.
Indiana was one I had overrated, and I just did not think they were going to match what they did last year. Not that the coach is not good. I just thought he got a little inflated.
He's a great coach.
Yeah,
he's a great coach. I mean, we're talking about Indiana football. They're not a powerhouse by any stretch of the imagination. That game was 14-0 about the time they finished the national anthem. Indiana did not know what hit them. That game got away from them very quickly. A long run for Iowa, and then they had a pick six, and it's 14-0 literally, I think like 2.5 minutes into the game. And then it was basically all Iowa from there. They led it 31-3 at the half, and it was well over by then. That was an impressive win by Iowa. In the Big Ten, we saw Ohio State Thursday night. In the Big Ten, I was impressed by Michigan showed life at least, right? We got some life from Michigan. So that's one. Iowa was very impressive. That's two.
Michigan State. I called that one too. Yep. LT doesn't like Mel Tucker as a coach, but I thought his performance, his team whipped Northwestern from the get-go.
On Friday night, Illinois came back to earth very, very quickly. They lost to UTSA. I think you called that, or somebody on our show called that.
LT called that.
Yeah, LT. I mean, you could kind of see it coming, couldn't you? They have that big win. They've, a win over Nebraska is not a big win, but it was Bielema's first game. All those things, all those factors that played into it. Maryland, a team you don't think about being in the Big Ten, had a good win over West Virginia. So, no, but Iowa to me probably is the story of the Big Ten coming out of week one. By the way, they just beat down Indiana 31-3. That game was over before it started.
Yeah, absolutely. And this guy's right. Kinnick Stadium claims a lot of Big Ten teams over the years, and we saw that. I thought Texas was good. We talked about Texas already. USC, San Jose State was one of those sexy. If you're looking for an upset this weekend, look at Louisiana to beat Texas, or look for San Jose State to beat USC, and neither one of those happened. Texas and Sark and USC and Helton both answered the bell today.
Didn't get, it was on Pac-12 Network, so I didn't get to see it. Saw some highlights earlier. Keaton Slovis, though, looked like he had a pretty good game. 24-36, 256, 2 touchdowns. They ran the ball okay, 160 rush yards, but really it was their defense. Now, Starkle threw for 308 yards, but they intercepted him twice, and that was the difference in the game. They didn't let San Jose State run it on them. That was a good win. There were a lot of people that had that in their maybe upset category, but USC got a solid win there.
Scott, who's our head of videography and next round, says UAB scores more points on Georgia next week than Clemson did. I'd take that bet. I would say yes, too.
I think I like that. Now, UAB can struggle some offensively. We saw that against Jack State, but Kirby immediately, I don't know if you stuck around for the post game with Holly Rowe. And, Kirby immediately says, hey, we got a great opponent playing us next week. He gave UAB a lot of love. So, and it didn't feel like coach speak either. I think Kirby probably genuinely feels that way.
No, he said if our offense doesn't fix itself, we could be in trouble next week. Yeah, that's true. So, anytime you don't score points, the games are going to be close, right?
And UAB's defense doesn't have the same athletes on it that Clemson's does. I'm not going to pretend that, but UAB, that's what they are built on, is defense. And the way I just saw Georgia's offense play, they won't go up and down the field on UAB's defense. But I'm telling you, man, that Georgia defense is going to be tough for people to score on. The UAB, they got their hands full scoring on that defense. Those linebackers are so good.
Yeah, and the scheme was I watched it tonight thinking to myself, boy, when Alabama and Georgia play each other, if they do, in the SEC championship game, even Alabama will have their hands full on how do you block? How do you block that scheme there? And you got to have a plan. I thought Clemson had moments there in the second half. I was just really surprised at how much Uiagalelei was so hesitant, just held the ball a little too long, and how their play calling in the first half did not help him with shorter throws with the pressure they were getting. Where were the really quick short throws? And maybe that's his fault that he wasn't checking into those throws, signaling for those hot routes or something like that. Because we talk about how Bryce managed the game. DJ hadn't started a lot either at Clemson, and I don't know if he managed the game that well. We'll hear from Dabo coming up a little bit later in the week.
Yeah. Maybe it was just maybe over the years Deshaun Watson covered up a lot of it, or Trevor Lawrence covered up a lot of it, and DJ couldn't. But that was not Tony Elliott's finest moment as a play caller. That offense they never adjusted. They just couldn't adjust to what Georgia was doing. Dan Lanning and Kirby Smart were a step or two ahead of them the entire game. And Herb Street pointed it out one time. He said it's almost like Dan Lanning is feeding them the plays Clemson's about to run. Georgia's they're in the perfect place every single time. So, yeah, I mean, Tony Elliott got out-coached in that game. I don't think there's any doubt by Dan Lanning.
Okay, two more post-game from Nick Saban I want to get to before we get out of here. We got about 5 minutes left in our Saturday Breakout live with you here late nights on Saturdays, or you're hearing us on the replay counting down to our live Monday show when the next round as a group returns. 9 to 1 weekdays, Monday through Friday on all of our social media platforms. YouTube, you watch us live there. You watch us live here on Periscope, or you can always listen to the audio anywhere in the world on the Next Round app. Here is Nick Saban being asked about Cameron Latu, who got the start in place of Jaleel Billingsley, and boy, did he take advantage of it.
Seems like a guy like Cameron Latu really sets the tone physically. How does he do that for you guys so far today as well?
Cameron came to Alabama as an outside linebacker, and we had a need for tight end. He also played tight end in high school, so I think before last season, I said, I think you have a lot better shot to be a tight end. You got good hands, you got great size, you're a good athlete, and he bought into it. And it's taken a little bit of time for him to develop and feel comfortable and confident at the position, but I was encouraged, and I think the success that he had today will build confidence. And I think that's really important, especially when you have a lot of new players that don't have a lot of experience. When they get in the game and they have some success, that really helps their confidence. And, hopefully it'll help them continue to develop and improve.
How much money did Nick Saban make Latu with that move from linebacker, where he probably never plays in the NFL, to tight end, where you could see him one day being on an NFL roster? He looked fantastic today, and I love the coaching moment that you caught. Nick, the ESPN ABC cameras caught Nick Saban standing next to Jaleel Billingsley after the first touchdown. And then later in the game, I think 8 minutes to go in the third quarter, Billingsley goes in there. And what is the first thing they ask Billingsley to do is to come across and block, to open up a hole on a linebacker to free up a running back, to be a team player. I thought they covered that perfectly, and you hope that Latu and Billingsley will just be a big, deep tight end core for Alabama the rest of the way.
Well, if you feared drop-off at the tight end position, there was none. I mean, he scored 2 touchdowns, and as good as Billingsley was last year, there was no drop-off on production as far as the pass catching goes. You saw Latu miss a key block that got his quarterback in trouble one time, and that's part of the tight end position as well. You mentioned it with Billingsley. You got to be able to block too. But it appeared, I don't know that Billingsley's entirely out of the doghouse, but he got back on the field playing, and Jim, you saw later on in the game, he was back returning kickoffs. So, that's an indication that maybe he's out of Nick Saban's doghouse just a little bit. But now, as so often happens, a guy is not on the field, and it allows another guy to really show what he can do. Boy, you got 2 pretty good tight ends on this team now, don't you? Between Latu and Jaleel Billingsley, you've got kind of a 2-headed tight end monster that can deal some teams some miseries, because both those guys can be a little bit of a matchup issue.
You really do. And now one more soundbite from the postgame. Nick Saban, Alabama's win over Miami, talking about his quarterback, Bryce Young.
A little bit more about Bryce Sanders' performance, first career start. I think he had 9 different targets, and how he looked back there to you.
Oh, I think Bryce did really, really well. He's smart. I think most people just look at the stats and say he was whatever he was for this many yards. But, he redirects the protection. He plays like a veteran out there. We had the one, sack fumble, which, is something that we don't really want to have, but really not all his fault that he doesn't get protected. But I was really impressed with the way he played in the game, the poise that he played with, the command that he had. He kind of took what the defense gave and really directed the offense in a really positive way. And when we had opportunities to make plays on third down and a couple other explosive plays, he certainly did a great job of getting the ball to the right guy in the right time at the right place. So I was really pleased.
What more do you want from a quarterback? Final minute here, Brownie. Some more reaction. Clemson has now lost 2 in a row. That doesn't happen a lot for Dabo. Yeah.
Somebody asked me on Twitter when I thought the last time they had done that was. I don't even know how far back you'd have to go.
Yeah. And are you guys working Labor Day? Yes. We are live on Labor Day. We'll be there 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time. All the way through it. Brown, thanks for doing this with me. Saturday Breakout. It's brought to you by the great folks at Mortgage Right. Anywhere that you watch us or listen to the next round, you get a chance to get a mortgage with our friends at Mortgage Right. They're so kind to support us, and we hope you support all of our sponsors. We were about to be live if you're listening to this on a Monday morning, and we'll talk more football with you. Thanks for being part of the Next Round family, and until next time, God bless you. And God bless America. All right, Brownie. All right, all you guys who are with us live, thanks for letting us record a little something that will, if you missed any of it, you can jump on to our app and catch some of that leading all the way up into the start of our live show on Monday. Thanks, and listen, for the 38 or so of you that are live with us right now, we so much appreciate you guys. As we try to do this new venture. Brown, before we get off of this, if you'd share with your thoughts on just how much they mean to us, every one of them. Never before have I been so thankful for every single person who supports us.
Yeah, it's really crazy. We get to see the numbers that we don't publicize, obviously, but when we see them, we are just blown away at how much people have supported us and just the feedback. Talking to, as Rush Probst once said, people talking, the feedback we get on social media, just running into people, it's been incredible. And the fun part of this is it's just the beginning. We know it only gets better from here. So that's the exciting part.
Yeah. We're excited to have you guys along with us, and thank you for letting us do what we do and sharing it with you guys. And we'll try to do this every Saturday night. I got some work coming up with CBS 42 that will have me, not in my temporary home here. So you may see me at a stadium or at the CBS 42 studios, and Brown will be hosting this. I actually think it's a little bit better, the Periscope, when I'm in the field and you're hosting it, Brown. So I'll have to give you the password.
If you're not there, you think I get Lance? You think Lance is in any sort of is he able to do it right now? You think, like, if we dialed Lance up right now, I think our listeners would love it.
Oh, they would love it. I'm not sure. Our legal team would love it. All right, guys. Thanks for being with us late night. Is it Sunday morning yet? It is. It's midnight right there.
No, it's not. It is.
Happy Sunday, everybody.
It's like a new year.
Happy New Year, football. See you guys soon. Bye.